LocalStack just killed their open source edition, and developers are only now discovering what that actually means.
Killed? What happens to everyone using the free community edition? So we're covering the registration requirements, what features are locked, and migration options?
By minute 4, you'll know exactly how this impacts your workflow and what alternatives exist. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Platform Engineering Playbook Daily Podcast. Today's news and a deep dive to help you stay ahead in platform engineering.
Today, we're diving into LocalStack for AWS drops Community Edition, raising developer concerns.
Stick around to the end for today's headlines. Let's dive right in.
So, LocalStack just dropped a bombshell on the developer community. They're discontinuing their community edition and moving to a registration-required model. And Alex, the reaction has been intense.
Yeah, I saw the Reddit threads exploding. We're talking about a tool that's been freely available since 2017, used by thousands of developers for local AWS testing. This feels like a fundamental shift.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how they're framing it. The co-founders, Waldemar Hummer and Gerda Shiganaku, are calling the original LocalStack an open source experiment, which, as you can imagine, didn't sit well with the community that built their reputation.
An experiment? Wow. I mean, LocalStack has been a cornerstone tool for so many teams. We've been using it for years to test our AWS integrations without racking up cloud bills. How do you go from being the go-to solution to calling yourself an experiment?
Well, let's dig into what's actually changing here. Previously, you had two versions, the Community Edition under Apache 2.0 license, completely free, and the Pro Edition with advanced features. Now they're combining everything into a single Docker image that requires registration, even for the free tier.
So what happens to existing workflows? I know teams that have LocalStack baked into their CI/CD pipelines.
That's the big disruption. Any project automatically pulling the latest LocalStack/LocalStack image will break when this change goes live in March. You'll need to update your workflows to handle authentication, and here's where it gets tricky. The free tier doesn't include CI credits.
Wait, no CI credits on the free tier? That's going to break a lot of open source projects.
Exactly. And Brian Rinaldi, their head of developer relations, has already acknowledged on Reddit that they'll likely need to revise this. But think about the timing. You're asking developers to scramble to update their pipelines with only a 2-month notice.
You know what strikes me? This feels like part of a larger pattern. We've seen Elastic change their license, MongoDB, Redis. Is this the end of the open core model as we know it?
That's the million-dollar question. LocalStack's argument is that maintaining high-fidelity AWS emulation has become too complex and expensive to sustain on an open-source model. They're saying they need direct user engagement and sustainable revenue to keep investing in the platform.
But at what cost to the community? I mean, some developers on Reddit are already talking about building their own alternatives using AI agents.
Coming up, we'll dig into exactly what this means for the thousands of teams relying on LocalStack, what alternatives exist, and whether this signals a broader shift in how developer tools are monetized. So let's break down what's really happening here technically. LocalStack has been emulating over 80 AWS services locally. We're talking everything from S3 and DynamoDB to Lambda and step functions. The complexity of maintaining parity with AWS's constantly evolving APIs is staggering.
Right, and AWS launches new features practically every week. How does LocalStack even keep up?
That's exactly the crux of their argument. They're saying that what started as a scrappy project to mock basic AWS services has evolved into something that requires full-time engineering teams, security audits, and continuous updates. The Pro Edition already had features like Cloud Pods for sharing state, IAM enforcement, and advanced Lambda features. Now they're saying even the basic emulation requires this level of investment.
But here's what bothers me. They built their entire reputation on being the open source alternative. I've recommended LocalStack in probably 50 architecture reviews. Now I have to go back and revise all of that?
Let's talk numbers. The new pricing starts at $39 per license per month when billed annually. For a team of 5 developers, you're looking at almost $2,400 per year. That's not trivial for smaller teams or startups.
And what about the alternatives? I've seen people mentioning Modo, which is a Python library for mocking AWS services. There's also this new project called Vera AWS for EC2 emulation.
Modo is solid for unit testing, but it doesn't give you the full local cloud experience that LocalStack provides. It's more about mocking individual service calls rather than running a full local AWS stack. Vera AWS is interesting, but very early. It only handles EC2 right now.
What about AWS's own tools? They have SAM CLI for local Lambda testing.
SAM CLI is great for serverless, but it's limited in scope. It doesn't give you the full AWS experience locally. And that's what made LocalStack so valuable. You could test complex interactions between services without deploying anything.
The CI/CD impact is what really worries me. Even if companies pay for licenses, the credit system for CI builds seems problematic. How do you budget for that when you might have hundreds of builds per day?
The current proposal is that CI credits depend on your pricing tier, with none on the free plan, so every automated test run would consume credits. For a typical microservices architecture with multiple repos and frequent commits, you could burn through credits fast. One Reddit user calculated they'd need the $300 per month team plan just to maintain their current CI velocity.
That's a 10x increase in cost overnight for some teams. And what happens when you run out of credits? Do your builds just fail?
That's still unclear, but presumably yes. And think about the implications. You might have a critical hotfix blocked because you're out of LocalStack credits. That's a new operational risk that didn't exist before.
There's also the trust factor. Once you require registration, you're tracking usage. What data are they collecting? How is it stored?
They haven't been fully transparent about that yet. The registration requirement means they'll minimum have your email and usage patterns. For enterprises with strict data policies, this could be a deal breaker.
What about forking? The old Community Edition is still Apache 2.0 licensed, right?
Yes, the code is still on GitHub, but LocalStack says the repository will be archived and inactive. So you could fork it, but you'd be on your own for maintaining compatibility with new AWS features. And given the velocity of AWS releases, that fork would become outdated quickly.
This really changes the calculus for platform teams. We've been advocating for LocalStack as a way to reduce AWS costs during development. Now we have to factor in LocalStack costs too.
Stick around. We'll break down exactly what platform teams should do now, including a decision framework for whether to stick with LocalStack, migrate to alternatives, or completely rethink local testing strategies. All right, so what should platform engineers actually do about this? Let's start with immediate actions. First, audit your current LocalStack usage. How many developers are using it? What services are you emulating? Are you using any pro features already?
And don't forget about CI/CD pipelines. Search your repos for any references to the LocalStack/LocalStack Docker image. Those need to be updated before March or they'll break.
Here is a decision framework I'd recommend. If you're using LocalStack for basic S3 and DynamoDB testing, you might be able to switch to Modo, or even just use actual AWS with strict cost controls. But if you're doing complex multi-service testing, especially with Lambda, step functions, or API gateway, the alternatives get thin.
What about the cost-benefit analysis? At $39 per developer per month, when does it make sense to just use real AWS resources?
Great question. Let's say you have a team of 10 developers. That's $390 per month for LocalStack. You could provision a dedicated AWS testing account with budget alerts. For many use cases, you might actually spend less on real AWS resources, especially if you're aggressive about cleanup.
But then you lose the speed of local testing, right? No network latency, instant feedback.
Exactly. And that's the trade-off platform teams need to evaluate. The value of LocalStack isn't just cost savings, it's developer velocity. If your developers are running hundreds of tests daily, that network round-trip time adds up.
So what's the playbook here? What would you recommend to a platform team facing this change?
First, negotiate. If you're a significant user, reach out to LocalStack directly. They might be flexible on pricing or CI credits, especially given the community backlash. Second, implement a hybrid approach. Use LocalStack for complex integration testing, but move simple unit tests to Modo or native AWS SDK mocks.
What about building abstraction layers? Could platform teams create their own testing interfaces that could swap between LocalStack, Modo, or real AWS?
Now you're thinking like a platform engineer. That's exactly what I'd recommend for larger organizations. Build a testing abstraction that isn't locked to any single provider. It's more upfront work, but it gives you flexibility.
Any predictions on how this plays out? Will LocalStack reverse course if they lose enough users?
I think we're going to see a fork emerge. Someone in the community will pick up the community edition and try to maintain it. Whether that succeeds depends on finding sustainable funding, maybe through GitHub sponsors or corporate backing.
But that still leaves the immediate problem. Teams need to make decisions now.
Here's my concrete advice. If you're a small team or individual developer, explore the free tier, but have a backup plan. For enterprises, this might actually be a positive. You now have a supported, security-audited solution with SLAs. For open source projects, push back hard. LocalStack says they'll keep it free for OSS, but the CI credit limitation needs to be resolved.
This whole situation really highlights the fragility of depending on open source tools for critical infrastructure.
It does. And I think the bigger lesson here is about the sustainability of open source. We've gotten used to high-quality developer tools being free, but maintaining them at the level modern cloud development requires isn't cheap. Maybe we need to rethink how we value and fund these essential tools.
So, final thoughts. Is this the canary in the coal mine for other developer tools?
I think we're going to see more of this. The era of VC-funded free developer tools might be ending. Platform engineers need to build more resilient architectures that don't assume any single tool will remain free forever. Document your dependencies, build abstractions where possible, and always have a plan B. Because if LocalStack taught us anything this week, it's that even the most established open source tools can change their models overnight. Before we wrap up, let's catch up on this week's infrastructure news. There's a fascinating new development in AI video generation that's causing quite a stir in Hollywood. TechCrunch reports that ByteDance's new C-Dance 2.0 video generator has major studios up in arms over copyright concerns.
Oh boy, another AI tool trained on copyrighted content without permission?
Exactly. The studios are claiming C-Dance 2.0 was trained on their films without authorization. What's interesting for platform engineers is how this highlights the growing need for content provenance tracking and rights management in AI pipelines.
Speaking of AI transforming workflows, have you seen what Spotify is doing with Claude for code deployment?
Yes, according to Next Unicorn Ventures, Spotify engineers can now literally use Slack on their phones to tell Claude to fix bugs or add features. The AI handles the entire deployment process.
Wait, they're deploying production code from their phones via Slack? That sounds both amazing and terrifying.
It's definitely pushing the boundaries of CI/CD automation. They're reporting 40% faster deployment times, but I'd love to know more about their guardrails and rollback procedures.
Meanwhile, TechCrunch has an eye-opening piece about computer science enrollment dropping at universities, while AI-specific programs are exploding.
The numbers are striking. Traditional CS programs down 15%, while AI programs are up 300%. Students are bypassing foundational computer science to jump straight into AI and machine learning.
That's concerning. How can you build robust AI systems without understanding data structures, algorithms, or systems design?
Great point. And speaking of building with AI, there's a fantastic article from Boris Cherny, the creator of Claude Code, sharing 35 tips for using the tool effectively.
Oh, I saw this on AintUp.io. The parallel sessions tip is genius, running multiple Claude instances to explore different implementation approaches simultaneously.
He also emphasizes the importance of model selection and planning your approach before diving into code. It's not just about prompting, it's about architecting your entire development workflow around AI assistance.
These tools are clearly reshaping how we think about platform engineering, from deployment automation to development practices.
That wraps up today's news. That's our show for today.
If you found this valuable, please subscribe and share with a friend who'd appreciate it.
Drop us a comment with your thoughts on today's topic.
Links to everything we discussed are in the show notes.
And check out platformengineeringplaybook.com for more resources and guides. Until next time.